Good morning to those of you who have already joined. My name is Nicholas. I am from Canopy. You may be seeing an image on your screen for Caitlin, but I am Nicholas from Canopy, your EAP, and we're just going to hold here for a minute or two, see if we can't allow some other people to find their way on over to us. Thank you to everybody who's already shown up. We are just holding for another minute more so that other people can find their way on over to us. My name is Nicholas. I'm from Canopy, your EAP, and we're just going to hold here for another minute as people continue to find their way on over to us. Good morning, good morning. We're just going to be holding pattern here for one more minute, and then we'll take off. Thank you so much. As people continue to join, we are just holding for another minute. We'll launch at 8:02. Thank you again for everybody who's here. We've got about half of the people here who have registered for this training. And since it is 8:02, I'm going to go ahead and dive into some housekeeping just briefly. We are here on GoToWebinar. If you'd like a copy of my presentation, the slide deck is available under the, you see, if you're using the older GoToWebinars, it's under the attachments. If you are using the newer GoToWebinar, it is under materials. Either way, that there is a copy of this presentation, this slide deck, available to you either under the attachments, handouts, or materials tab. Also under that materials or handouts tab is going to be a help document. If you've already been having a morning, if you worry that you might get dropped off this call, if you think your Wi-Fi might be a little thin, go ahead and click that webinar tech help document. It's under the materials or under the handouts tab. Then you'll have all the phone numbers and passcodes to get back on this call specifically. We will be going over all of the benefits that you have available to you through Canopy. We'll be covering all those benefits at the end of our presentation. And remember, all of this has been prepaid by State of Oregon. All of this is 100% confidential. The services you receive from Canopy is what I'm talking about. Those benefits are 100% confidential, and they are all prepaid. We'll be going over the benefits that you have available to you from Canopy at the end of this presentation. But that is about as much as I can drag it out as we allowed other people to find their way on over to us. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I see. There we are. We are here discussing avoiding job burnout, and it is such the case with this particular topic that by the time you are sitting down in front of this particular presentation where you are attempting to avoid job burnout, usually, and I mean 9 times out of 10, the person who is sitting in front of this presentation has already begun to experience burnout or is in the deep throes of burnout. We are talking specifically about job burnout. However, I am sure you'll hear something in this presentation that will apply to your life outside of work. Feel free to utilize these techniques, these tactics, these perspectives, whether you are in the workplace, around the workplace, or nowhere near the workplace. We are talking about job burnout specifically, and it's important to remember that when it comes to job burnout, That is not all internal, and that is not all external. I can't say that all of job burnout comes from factors on the outside of you, all of that external. I also can't say that you are experiencing job burnout because of your own resiliency. No, it is a two-part process, two players in this. There are all the things that you cannot control. Say those externals, your workload, your work pace. Sometimes there's something that changes at work that just you have no choice. You have to roll with it, so to speak. Those are all those external stressors, all those external things asking for you to care about them, be concerned about them. If it's a person, they might be asking you to give a little compassion. Well, that is just the external. The internal, that piece which we may have a bit more control over, that is our own resiliency. That is our own ability to effectively cope with, adjust to, manage some stressors, manage some of those responsibilities. There is a resiliency aspect that is internal, but there is so much about job burnout, which is external. I make a very important point to underscore this point because it would be a mistake to blame an employee for their own burnout, saying this is because you don't take enough time off. There are too many things outside of our control at the workplace, around the workplace, things that we wish we could change, we don't have the power to. And so therefore, to blame somebody for their own burnout, that is an unfair amount of responsibility to put on that human being. Yes, resiliency is part of it, but there are so many external stressors. There are so many things outside of our control that it would be a mistake to say that that person had invited their own burnout or that somehow their own burnout was their own fault. We don't want to turn around and blame our employees for their own burnout because it can further serve to make them feel worse. It could silence them, push them back away from reaching out for help, increase the stigma around their own mental health. On average, the median delay time between somebody begins exhibiting some mental health symptoms or when they actually get some treatment, the median delay time is not 5 years, it is 10 years. Most commonly, people are waiting up to 10 years before they address some of their mental health symptoms. And when we turn around and we say to that person who has overcome some stigma, willing to be brave enough and admit, I'm experiencing job burnout, we turn around, if we blame that individual, it will further push them away from help, away from benefit. Instead, could serve to increase some of their negative symptoms, could actually serve to make them feel worse. So when we are talking about job burnout, do avoid blaming that individual for their own sense of burnout. Now, burnout is different than stress. We experience it differently. When we are stressed, you probably have felt this before, it's a very physical interaction, very physical experience. We hold stress, we hold it in our jaw, we hold it in our eyes, we hold it in our shoulders. At the end of a stressful day, we probably feel physically exhausted. And that is because not only do we hold stress in our body in a very active way, sometimes when there is a level of anxiety or confusion, when we don't know how best to get away from the stress, sometimes we just start doing stuff. Sometimes we want to reduce our own anxiety by doing something, some sort of action. Well, I've got to do something to try and help this. That urgency, that hyperactivity, you can start to feel your blood rate go up. You can start to feel your breathing rate change. And after all of that urgency, sometimes it can lead to that feeling of just physical exhaustion. I have been trying to hold it together all day. I have been pushing back against the waves of stress all day. And by the end of the day, I'm physically exhausted. When I am physically exhausted, sometimes that feeds into, oh my gosh, now I can't do anything about those things that I'm worried about that are coming my way. That's going to increase the anxiety. Stress is not something we enjoy. Stress is often something that we are trying to reduce. Unless we are talking about a functional level of stress that actually helps us get through our day, we are usually talking about an overwhelming amount of stress that we did not invite, and it can be exhausting. Now, that is different than burnout. Burnout Instead of having that experience of holding your tension in your hands or holding it in your shoulder or holding it in your jaw, sometimes what we hold is our own head. We are just so burned out. It is emotionally tolling in a way that stress is physically tolling. Burnout, then we're going to talk about some of the other sources of burnout or where it comes from, but so often burnout is the result of I just keep putting forth energy and I get nothing out of it. I keep putting forth effort and I get no reward. I keep working harder and I get no sense of accomplishment, no sense of satisfaction. I keep chipping away at this mountain and the mountain's not getting any smaller. So for many people, burnout is that experience of what is the point? I keep a trying. I keep doing my best, but I can't necessarily summon up the willingness to put forth more energy, good energy after bad. Question that came through on the chat, can stress and burnout coincide with each other or occur at the same time? They can. They absolutely can. I could have stress in one corner of my life and burnout in another corner of my life. I can feel totally stressed at the workplace, totally burned out at home. 5 o'clock, I realize I am still holding on to the stress of work and I am facing the burnout of home life. Yes, stress and burnout can coincide. They can both occur at the same time. In fact, I bet you if you were all in the same room, you could look around and see a lot of heads nodding right now saying like, yes, I am both stressed and burned out. I am both of these things. I am eager and active and doing everything I can to help my own anxiety. And at the same time, I am also emotionally exhausted from attempting to make progress and feeling like I'm only banging my head against the wall. One of the great antidotes to burnout is a sense of accomplishment. Is that sense of satisfaction that I got something done, I am making progress, this progress is going to stick, I'm not going to backslide, we're moving forward. That sense of accomplishment is a great antidote to burnout. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But if you are hoping for reward from work, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of satisfaction, and you are not getting it from that work, well, definitely there are some ways that we can self-advocate, and we are going to talk about how we can get more of it out of our workplace, but also consider if we are counting on just one source for our sense of accomplishment and our sense of satisfaction, it's possible we need to diversify, add something else, maybe something else that gives us that sense of satisfaction. You know what? I am not getting that sense of accomplishment from the workplace, but you know what? Whenever I cook cupcakes with my kids, I always have that sense of accomplishment. We got that done. We spent some quality family time. Whatever else happens today, I know that we had an hour of solid connection. That sense of satisfaction can help offset burnout feelings still lingering from the workplace. So if you are not necessarily getting the sense of satisfaction and accomplishment from the job, let's look at a couple other corners in our life. There might be another place that has some more readily available sense of accomplishment that we could put some energy toward. We are going to talk about that more in depth, but important to know that stress and burnout are different things, different experiences. They can occur at the same time. We might address them, remedy them a little bit differently. As I mentioned, that sense of accomplishment is a good one for burnout. And as you can see, I mean, this page alone, this slide alone can summon up some burnout, just the amount of information. In a nutshell, what this is showing you is there are multiple types of burnout, multiple places it can come from, and multiple sources that are generating some burnout. The one I like to draw attention to is poor communication. Sometimes it's in that organizational culture. Sometimes changes are coming down the pipe fast. Sometimes we are not given much heads up before we are going to have to adapt, before we are going to have to change our ways, before we're going to have to learn a new system, learn a new route. All of a sudden, we didn't have a lot of input on why this is coming out now, but now we have to deal with it. So a lot of times it is that poor communication. You didn't get enough of a heads up that this change was coming. And so therefore you are shocked, you are stunned, it's throwing you off a little bit. You didn't have input on that particular change that was coming your way. So not only is it a surprise that it arrived, the content is a surprise. You didn't know you were going to have to make this type of adjustment. And sometimes it has to do with prioritization. Sometimes it is, I'm doing my best at work, focusing on this to-do list or this checklist or this list of priorities. Nobody told you that they snuck a new project in there. You've been working on project A responsibly all day, but nobody told you that we moved over to project B. The communication wasn't there. And so you just spent all day working on a project that we're not working on anymore. And come tomorrow, you're behind the 8 ball because you didn't make any progress on project B. Nobody told you that we were switching over. Nobody clarified that we need to make this the priority today. That lack of communication can lead to a great sense of burnout. So you get halfway through your day, somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, we were supposed to be working on this other project, right? You can almost hear your shoulders falling when somebody says that to you. You're like, are you kidding me? I just spent all day doing this and nobody told me. Oh my gosh, you can start to see an emotional reaction is building up there. You can start to see like, okay, that's it, I'm backing up. So feel free to look through here and see if there isn't one of these types of burnout that is closer to the type of burnout that you are experiencing. And there is a way that we can make some improvements. The emotional signs and symptoms of burnout, perhaps you're already experiencing some of this or you know somebody who is. There's that sense of failure and self-doubt. What? We were supposed to be working on project B? Oh my gosh. There's that sense of failure. Feeling helpless, trapped, or defeated. Nobody told me that we were changing. How am I supposed to know that this is the new priority? There's that helplessness. Detachment, feeling alone in the world. No one is letting me know. No one is giving me the information. I'm out here on the end of this branch by myself. Loss of motivation. I've tried week after week to make some progress, but it is just not worth it. I keep just banging my head against this wall. That lends itself right into that increasingly cynical and negative outlook. Not only is it not worthwhile for me to try and make progress, it might not be. Now we're spreading that bad attitude around the office, around the workplace, and you can try if you want, but I have found that it's not worth your time. And that decreased satisfaction and sense of accomplishment almost leads you to say, well, why? Why would I put forth more if I am not receiving any type of gratification, satisfaction, or accomplishment back? Some of the behavioral signs and symptoms, things that you might see people doing: withdrawing from responsibilities. Oh no, I'm already overwhelmed. I've got plenty on my plate. I am going to try to find a way to avoid being on that team, not be assigned that. I am not raising my hand as a volunteer. Isolating yourself from others. This is an important one. When you notice that you have a coworker who is choosing to show up late in the morning, leave early at the end of the day, they don't want to be a part of your happy hour or your staff meeting or your team check-in. They're doing everything that they can to reduce interaction with other humans. That's somebody you're going to want to check in on. Social isolation is indicative of some very concerning mental health problems. So when you notice that somebody is socially isolating, check in on them, and I offer you my 2-step check-in. Check in on the first time, count on they might brush you off. They might say, I'm fine, whatever, just leave me be. Count on that, and that's when you dig in your heels and lay the groundwork for check-in number 2. Okay, but I'm going to circle back around at the end of today, ask you the same question. I'm going to circle back around at the end of this week, I'm going to ask you the same question. Now, to somebody who is feeling isolated, for somebody who is feeling alone, trapped, or helpless, if you offer them, hey, I want to hear what's going on with you. I want to check in with you. I want you to let me know what's going on with you, be it positive or negative. You might be the only person this week that has expressed any interest in learning more about that person's internal life. So when you set that groundwork for check-in number 2, make sure you hold on to that second appointment. because they could be hanging on to that appointment like a life raft in the back of their mind. Other behavioral signs and symptoms, procrastinating, of course. If I don't feel like I've got much motivation, I am not jumping on top of that work pile. Using food, drugs, or alcohol to cope. Sometimes we do blunt our feelings, numb our feelings, change the way we feel with an external that way. Displaced aggression or irritability. Sometimes you get that snapping turtle response when people check in on you. Missing work, lateness, leaving early. I mentioned it before. When you notice that social isolation in others, check in on that person, check in on them maybe twice. Some lifestyle causes of burnout. Again, not blaming anybody for their own level of burnout. Some important things to consider here that might be beneficial in reducing some of those symptoms. First one, work-life balance and difficulty setting boundaries. For some of us, we'll say, you can contact me anytime. Feel free to let me know what's going on. Keep me in the loop. I don't care if it's after 5. I don't care if it's the weekend. You reach out to me anytime, day or night. That is not a boundary. That is making yourself ultimately available at any time for any of your employees. And if you are somebody who is trying to spend some energy, spend some time on a different activity that might offer you that sense of accomplishment, you don't want to be interrupted by work calls. You don't want to be dragged back into that work mindset when you were doing everything you can to reduce your stress. So the importance of those boundaries is just like putting a guard fence or a guardrail around something valuable. Inside, that's where your recovery time is. We're going to set a boundary around the outside so that work can't find its way in during these hours. For some people, setting boundaries is difficult. They don't like pushing people away. Feels like it's insulting to them. Instead, I suggest you try inviting people to talk to you during the good times. Start with an invitation and then follow it up with a boundary. You know, I am everybody's best friend between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. I've had my cup of coffee and it's not that close to lunch. If you've got a question, a problem, or something, you want to get my opinion, come find me between 9 and 11. And you and I both know it doesn't do you any good to come and find me at 4 o'clock. Because at 4 o'clock, I am mentally packing my bag. I am already charting my route home. So in that way, start with an invitation and then highlight the boundary. Tell them you do want to interact with them during these times and tell them it's not worth their time to come find you during what would be a checkout time for you. Lack of close supportive relationships can also lead to that feeling of burnout, especially that helplessness, that feeling of alone. Lack of close supportive relationships. Now, supportive relationships slightly different, maybe, than some of your personal friendships. It's possible that they are there for you, that they've got your back, helping you feel better. But it's also possible that you've got a group of friends who might tease you a little bit if you are dedicating some of your time and energy to your own mental health. Not trying to say change your friends, but we are saying if you want better support, if you want somebody else behind you, standing in your corner, helping you make some progress, remember, you can call Canopy, 1-800-433-2320. We can be that support network for you. We have life coaching available for you. Another lifestyle cause of burnout, maybe saying yes to too many things. Sure, put me on that committee. Yes, I will be a part of that. I'll volunteer for that. I'll bring snacks to the kids' soccer game. Not getting enough sleep. We talk about revenge bedtime procrastination. That is the activity we do on our screen or on our phone when we could be sleeping. Jams are on, lights are out, everybody else is in bed. We crawl into bed and instead of snoozing, we are scrolling through our phones because we haven't had the time all day. We've been giving out our time and attention to everybody else. Now it's me time. And rather than doing something restorative for myself, like catching up on my sleep, I think I'd rather scroll through these photos. Too many distraction-based coping strategies without enough restorative self-care practices. That's exactly what I'm talking about. spending an hour on your phone, scrolling through the photos right before you fall asleep, maybe doing it so long that your eyes are closing. That's not the best way to take care of yourself in that moment. And when we are exhausted and burned out, we don't have the energy to do that thing that's probably healthier. We've only got the energy to do that thing that is distracting. When we are burned out, trying to do the healthy thing or make the healthy choice, oftentimes we will resort to a distraction, but it does not help the next day feel much better. Instead, we have to give ourselves permission to do something kinder to ourselves, give ourselves some restorative and not just distraction practices. Some personality traits that might lead to burnout. Maybe everything needs to be perfect in your world. Maybe that's why we're spending extra energy on this particular project, because we are fine-tuning it. Sometimes it's that need to be in control, regardless of what the project is. I'm not going to delegate. I figure I can count on myself more than I can count on other people, but that is lending to greater burnout. High achieving type A personality. Consider how you would define success and how you would define ideal employee. When we talk about success, would you define success as being at work more hours than anybody else that week? Or would you define success as a balance between work responsibilities and life responsibilities? When you think about an ideal employee, is it ideal to have an employee who never takes a sick day, never takes PTO, shows up 100, 300 days in a row, but what they bring to work is negativity and burnout and cynicism? It's possible that the ideal employee is different than the always there employee. If we're talking about balance, if we're talking about restoration, if we're talking about maybe even, how do they used to describe it? Sharpening the axe, taking some time off, polish your tools. The ideal employee is not a PTO camel. You might know a PTO camel at your workplace. They've got 300 hours of saved up PTO that they are just carrying around year after year, rolling it over, but never taking any downtime, never taking some time. If you are one of those folks who says, as long as I am here, then I am the ideal employee, or I am the best employee because I never take any time off, or I never use any of my PTO. Is that ideal? Is that how you would define ideal employee? Somebody who shows up a bit burned out, a bit negative, spreading some bad attitudes? Or is your definition of an ideal employee somebody who feels balanced? Somebody who's got some reward from work and is willing to go perhaps an extra mile? Think about how you would define success in the ideal employee, and think if it lines up with how you would describe a burned out employee. So what do? We want to interrupt the cycle because chances are we are already finding ourselves at levels of burnout. Reach out to those social supports. Don't try to manage it all by yourself. Talk to somebody about it. Find out that they too are experiencing some burnout at wherever they work. Ask them, what do you do? How do you make it through the day? If you've got a supervisor like that, how do you manage your stress? Reach out, find out that you are not the only one experiencing these symptoms. Think about reaching out to colleagues because they know your work life. Think about reaching out to family members because they know what's most important to you. Think about reaching out toward Canopy or another counselor or coach. Practice that restorative self-care, not just that distraction, but those things that help you feel better, getting some extra sleep, eating a little bit healthier, taking some PTO. Limit your contact with negative people whenever possible. If you find that the conversation is getting negative, getting dark, see if you can't excuse yourself from the conversation. Spend some time around some less than negative comments. We talk about connecting with a cause or community group that's personally meaningful to you, because there's going to be another source of accomplishment, satisfaction, give back. Do a hobby that has that clear beginning, middle, and end. Again, we are talking about finding that sense of accomplishment where you can say, you know what, if nothing else happens today, at least I finished that. This was the benefit, actually, of baking sourdough bread during lockdown. When we were all in quarantine due to the pandemic, we had a hard time making sense of how much time are we going to be here? How many more weeks? How many more months? How much longer is this going to last? One of the ways that we reduced anxiety was finding a project that we could accomplish there at the house. If I got nothing else done in one day, at least I baked that loaf of bread. Again, there is that sense of satisfaction that is a great antidote to feelings of burnout. And set boundaries. Remember that people can't read your mind. If you need some time to restore, if you need some time to not be on call, if you need some time to just focus on you and nobody else, that is okay. Let people know that you're going to take that time. Communicate to them, whether you are at work or at home, that you're going to take 15 minutes. You'd like that 15 minutes to not be interrupted. And when you come back, you're happy to offer somebody else a break. But right now, you need 15 minutes to clear your head. That is okay. And consider, as I mentioned before, when setting boundaries, invite people before you set a boundary. You can talk to me as much as you want after I take a 30-minute walk around the block. When I come back from that 30 minutes, I'm yours. But I've got so much going on up here that I'm not going to be any use to anybody unless I can take 15 minutes and clear my head. So when I come back, I'm all yours. But for right now, I need to step aside. Again, there's an invitation before a boundary. Makes it a little bit easier, lands on the ear a little bit easier, and also reassures that person that you're not just trying to escape the conversation. Self-advocacy. Once you start identifying some of these things that are causing you burnout, that are causing you stress, when we can, speak to our supervisor with specifics, suggestions, and solutions, we are far more likely to see progress. We are far more likely to see action taken. So when you step up with your supervisor, rather than kicking down the door and raging with complaints, pointing fingers and saying this is all this other person's problem, instead, offer that specific solution. Here's one thing that would help me feel less burned out at work. Now, in order to present that solution, you're going to have to come up with that solution. And that means that at some point you have identified this thing, this moment in my day is what's causing me burnout. The fact that I didn't know that we were changing priorities on our task list. The fact that I didn't know that we had switched projects. Here is one thing that'll help me feel less burned out at work. Make sure I am at the top of the call list for when we change priorities. I got to get the information. Another important one, how would you like me to reprioritize my work tasks since I've been given this new assignment? Oh, you're giving me a new route? You're giving me a new truck? You're giving me a new thing that I have to consider? Well, how would you like me to reprioritize the tasks that I am already working on since you gave me this one? You want me to finish these before I move over to this new project? Or do you want me to press pause on everything else I've been working on and give this my full attention? I want to get crystal clear and make sure the expectation is not, oh, you want me to work all of these as well as work all of these. So it's not that the priorities have shifted, you're just piling on. Well, hang on. We're going to need to adjust the expectations there. You come with the specific, the solution, the suggestion, you are far more likely to get action taken. Self-compassion is one of the ways that we boost our own resiliency. And since burnout is the result of external stressors and internal resiliency, we want to build up our own self-confidence, self-compassion. We try to find value in our work. Try to look back, think back. What was it that originally drew you to this job? What was the original reward, the original value that you were curious about? Can we summon that again? Can we find it again? Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is bringing your mind into the present moment, not worried about the changes that are coming down the pipe towards us, not still upset because somebody said something or did something to us in the past. Sometimes our mind does drift to those thoughts. worries, regrets. They are called ruminations. When we ruminate into the future, it is often referred to as anxiety. When we ruminate on things in the past, oftentimes referred to as depression. Anxiety and depression are normal parts of a healthy life and healthy parts of a normal life. However, when it becomes uncomfortable, we definitely want to do something about it. When we feel more anxious than we'd like, we want to do something about it. Bringing your mind into this moment and not worrying about the future is one of the evidence-based therapies for reducing anxiety. So bring yourself back into the present moment using a 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. That's 5 things you can see in your space right here, right now. 4 things you can feel in your space right here, right now. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you are grateful for right here, right now. Yes, we know the final sensation is taste, but we don't want you licking things at work. Do those 5-4-3-2-1, and you will find that your mind is no longer worried about the future or regretful of the past, but we are here in the present moment, here, now, and us. We talk about cognitive reframing. If you find yourself tending toward or trending toward negative thoughts, somebody asks you, hey, how's your weekend going? First thing you say is the negative. How was that last trip or last project? You're listing everything that went wrong. If that is your tendency, consider looking for 3 new things every day that you're grateful for. They can be small, but the act of looking for 3 new things every day that you can be grateful for, write them down over the course of 10 days. We can rewire the way in which we approach situations. Instead of looking for the negative, we can rewire our mind, start looking for the positive. When we talk about distress tolerance, we are talking about the willingness to look at what that stressor is. Just the willingness to consider it, not avoid it, not become overly fixated and think about it all day, but the willingness to look at it and say, that's not my favorite, that is bugging me. I'm not going to let it drag down my whole day, but we are definitely going to have to do something about it. So 1 is the willingness to look at what is bothering you. And the other is not to dwell on it all day. That is distress tolerance, being willing to look at the situation and not become overly fixated upon it, nor ignore it. That self-compassion is important to building up our own resiliency. That's what we can do for ourselves. When we're talking about the organization, what can they do to help us? Can they increase the psychological safety around the workplace by encouraging people to speak up? We know that a psychologically safe workplace is a workplace where you feel safe enough to speak up for yourself or speak up for others without the fear of reprimand. So one of the ways that we reach that is through trustworthiness and transparency, allowing more information to be shared with the employees whom it will be affecting. Let people share their voice in the decision before it's made, and make sure that people know before they have to experience the change that it is coming. Give them a heads up. And peer support. Sometimes there is nothing more supportive than someone who has worked there with you, somebody who can look at that same situation, or you can just mention an area, mention a route, mention a other employee, and your colleague will look back at you and go, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly who you're talking about. I have been there. That type of peer support, you can really feel seen, you can really feel heard. Continuing with that organizational steps, make sure that we are asking others for their opinion, how they might be able to encourage this particular rollout of this change. If they've got a perspective that'll help understand why this might be stressful or how we can reduce the stress regarding impact on employees, we definitely want that viewpoint. We definitely want to hear that. The more heads up, the more a part of the decision-making process that employees feel that they are, the better they feel. Avoid unintentionally blaming workers for their burnout or their compassion fatigue. Yes, there are some externals there that are far outside of their control. And so it would be a mistake to blame them. It might further silence them. It might increase the amount of time it takes them to reach out for help next time. And we want to reduce the stigma. We want to make it easier for people to talk about it, easier for people to point out, this is what's causing me burnout, and this is what's causing me stress. So as we look ahead, let's set some small goals for ourselves. Like, can we, instead of doing an hour's worth of screen right before we fall asleep, can we do that scrolling in the morning? Give ourselves an hour's better sleep than in the nighttime. If we still need to check in on those photos in the morning, we can. But let's not trade sleep for scrolling. Another measurable goal, think about that. Looking for 3 things you're grateful for each day, 3 new things every day. It can rewire the mind, help you feel a little less negative. And speaking of negativity and avoiding negativity, you might have to draw some boundaries, some emotional boundaries around what you are going to interact with and what you are not. We talk about social boundaries. Maybe it helps you to spend more time with people. Maybe it helps you to spend more time reflecting on your own. I'm not encouraging social isolation, but I am encouraging self-awareness of, you know what? I am in a real bad mood, and I think I need 15 minutes to go cool off before I can really engage in meaningful chit-chat. Mental boundaries. Again, how many hours a week am I going to spend thinking about work? When am I going to draw the line and say, that's it? I'm not answering any more emails. I'm not answering any more phone calls. I'm going to do everything I can to not even talk about work for the next 6 hours. All I want to do is focus on not that. See if I can't summon some reward, some satisfaction, some sense of accomplishment from some other sources. Allow my mind to detach from work stress. Connect with others. Let people know what you're going through. Listen to what other people are going through. It's possible you could hear somebody else's story of burnout and go, oh my gosh, I am so glad for my burnout compared to what's going on over there. It can be helpful just to put it into perspective. And practice that self-advocacy. If you can identify, that's the thing that's causing me burnout, that's the thing that's causing me stress, or that's one of, step up to that supervisor, put it in those terms. Here's one thing that'll help me be less burned out at work. Here's one thing that, if changed, will help me feel less stressed at work. You're going to hand me a new assignment. Well, how do you want me to prioritize this new assignment compared to the other assignments that you've assigned me already? Which one gets top billing? Which one gets top priority? Let's get that clarity so that we don't have the anxiety of confusion to add on top of our feelings of burnout. And remember, you have tremendous support from Canopy. There is always somebody that you can call, whether it is day or night, 24/7, 365. You've got crisis counseling available to you. It's 1-800-433-2320. If you have the time to set an appointment, feel free to either go to our website, give us a call, send us an email. We want to meet you in the way that you want to reach out. Mental health counseling and therapy available not only to you as the employee, but also your dependents in your household and your domestic partner. Yes, young people in your life can connect with a counselor or therapist in a matter of days. It's all been prepaid, and it's 100% confidential. Resources for life. You might not have the time during the day to research some solutions for your other life stressors. Give us a holler. We can spend the day looking for childcare, daycare, elder care, housing, emergency housing, housing assistance. You let us know what you're looking for. We'll spend the day doing the dig and get you a clean list of answers. Unlimited financial coaching. You probably didn't know that you have a financial expert that you can pick up the phone and call. 1-800-433-2320. Whether you are looking to save, whether you're looking to recover from debt, whether you've got some goals financially, whatever that financial question is, no question is too small or too large. Home ownership program and housing support, whether you're looking to sell, buy, or refi, we can save you between $2,000 and $6,000 on average. Legal advice. You might not have known that you have a lawyer that you can call and talk to for 30 minutes for free, 25% off every minute after that. If you've got a legal question, feel free to give us a holler, 1-800-433-2320. If you would prefer coaching as opposed to counseling, someone in your corner helping you toward success, toward better feeling, less stress, less burnout, give us a holler. We can set you up with a coach. Or if you'd like to, you can go to our website, which is my.canopywell.com. Type in State of Oregon or PEBB, and then you'll have access to the hundreds of resources available at our website. We will walk you through the process as soon as you get to our website, click by click, connecting you with those resources, with those counselors and therapists. Just go to my.canopywell.com, and when it asks for that company code, type in PEBB or State of Oregon. If you'd rather, you can download the app, and then you have right underneath your thumb some ways that you can connect with a counselor or address your own burnout. Again, we know that stigma is real, so we have reduced the cost to nothing. We have increased the confidentiality to 100%, and we have made as many different ways for you to reach out and connect with us as we can think of. So we are all trying to reduce that stigma. If you have ever had a positive experience with Canopy, do share it with a colleague. You never know who might be right on the fence about to reach out. You can help encourage them just by saying, it was easy for me, I called them, it was helpful. Again, if you want to call, give us a call. If you want to send us an email, you can, or do your own research at my.canopywell.com. There are self-training, self-assessments, as well as counselors and therapists available right there that you can connect with. Now, that all being said, I am going to stop my share, bring myself back here, large and in charge, check with anybody, see if they have got a question I can answer or something else I can make clear. Go ahead and type it into the questions tab. I'd be more than happy to answer what I see on my end. We have been here discussing avoiding job burnout. Remember, I am Nicholas. I am from Canopy, your EAP. Thank you kindly. Glad that everybody was here. Thank you for all taking the time and attention. Yes, this will be available. We have been recording this. So yes, it will be available for you to share around, as well as the slides will be available too. Can you clarify more the difference between reaching out for counseling versus coaching? Sure. Sometimes we have a goal that we've already identified. We have said to ourselves, you know what, I want to feel better about my burnout. We contact a coach and we say, here's my goal. My goal is to feel better about burnout, and I'd like to be able to check in with somebody, either electronically or over the phone, and be able to talk about what are some of my goals, what are standing in my way, what are my tactics for getting around them, and I'd like to be able to check in with you and say, here's my progress on making this particular goal. Now, counseling might be, I've been feeling this, and I am not 100% sure what the feeling is. I would like to explore how I can feel better. I might need to understand better what is making me feel worse. Do you have somebody who could talk me through this type of reflection, ask me these types of questions? Can you just connect me with a counselor so that I can talk for 40 minutes without being interrupted and just have somebody listen to me in terms of my well-being? Only keep it on me and not interrupt me to tell a personal story about themselves or not ask me to suddenly change the dynamic. Instead, I want somebody to help me figure out what's going on. That's a little bit different. Counseling is help me figure it out. Coaching is help me move down that path toward my goal. We talked about revenge sleep procrastination. Yes, they came up with a term for it. It's that thing that we do. It's that thing that we do when we know we should be sleeping. We know that it is time for sleep. We might even be in bed, blankets up, but we grab our phone anyway and we're quick going through it. But what we thought was going to be just a quick couple of messages turns into like an hour and a half of scrolling, and now it's 11:30 and you're like, oh my gosh, if I fall asleep right now, maybe I'll get 6 hours of sleep. Another question, is this available for our family members? Yes, it is. Dependents and domestic partners. If you wonder, is my family member a dependent? Feel free to give us a holler, 1-800-433-2320. Describe what's going on with your family member. They are your dependent. We'll offer the same services to them. Something more I can't make clear, type it into the chat. I'm happy to do so. New questions coming. I have trouble finding the motivation to do anything after work, and I'm guessing this says, and on the weekend. What do you suggest to help me with that? I suggest, and I do this for many people, when we are facing potential change, when we're looking to make some improvements, we need a couple of things that we can absolutely count on. Our brain doesn't love change. Our brain prefers reliability, predictability, and consistency. So let's give it a little consistency. Let's see how many days in a row we can go same wake time, same bedtime. Once our brain gets confident that, okay, I only need this much energy, I can look at the clock and know I've got about an hour left before I'm going to get a chance to take a break. Give yourself that routine. Put it on the calendar if you need to. Go 5 days, same wake time, same sleep time. Go 7 days, same wake and sleep. Go 14 days. Once we can get that regularity, it allows our mind a chance to explore a few other remedies in a couple other corners. We're not struggling for sleep. So with the addition of a reliable sleep routine, we may find that, hey, motivation comes to us in the morning. Motivation comes to us not at the end of the day, but at the top of the day. Maybe trying to extend the length of my day into the darker hours at the end of the day is what's exhausting. Is it possible I kick my day off earlier, put my self-compassion, my self-care earlier in the morning when I've still got some compassion before everybody else has a chance to drag it out of me? Put myself a little bit higher on my own priority list, charge myself up just like I were an electric car so that I have enough battery to make it through the whole day, except the battery in this case is compassion. So consider adding a routine to benefit your energy levels. It also helps your mind feel a little bit more calm. And consider reaching out to other corners of your day where there might be some more energy or motivation. I don't feel very motivated at 5 o'clock p.m., but maybe I feel more motivated at 5 a.m. Maybe that's my energy cycle. Maybe thanks to my new sleep routine, I know I've got enough time to make it through all the responsibilities, and still I can get up 30 minutes earlier. Also, reach out to other people, talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers. What are you doing on the weekends? How do you shake off work? How do you offset those feelings of stress? What do you do? Go ahead and crowdsource. Somebody might give you a suggestion that you didn't think of, or somebody might suggest something that you've got sitting in the back of your garage right now. I never thought of that. I'm going to grab one of those. So think about that. Ask other people what they are doing. Maybe they'll invite you along. Maybe you can find yourself a new source of satisfaction and accomplishment just because somebody else invited you to come along with them to drive their Jeep over boulders in the woods. Maybe that's your new form of self-care. So consider that, adding motivation. Can you be, let's see, am I available to come to staff meeting or crew meeting if burnout seems widespread? Yes, give us a call, 1-800-433-2320. Schedule me to come talk to you. I'll be more than happy to come in person if I'm available. Can you be burnt out on specific people when you feel that you are hitting a brick wall? How do you resolve? This is job or organizational burnout. Can you be burned out on specific people when you feel that you are hitting a brick wall? Yes. If your interactions seem to go the same, if you feel like every time I talk to this person, we are not making any progress, it just feels like conflict after conflict, confrontation after confrontation. Yes, you can feel burnt out on specific people. When it comes to having that conversation with that individual, you're having to self-advocate for yourself there in that moment. Stick to behavioral examples. Don't say, every time you bring this attitude, it just stirs everybody else up and we all walk away feeling terrible. That's all very general. Let's get real specific. When you add only negative comments to the progress of this project, it slows everything down, and we have to regroup for 15 minutes before we can get back on task. Be real specific, one, about the behavior that is causing some conflict or causing some difficulty. Two, highlight the impact it is having on you, speak from your own experience. Potentially offer a solution. But there is also the case of you put your hands up and you say, you know what? Doesn't feel like we're making any progress in this conversation. So we're going to table it for 20 minutes. We're going to come back, see if we can't make any better progress toward resolving some of these issues, because right now it just feels like we are fighting. So we're going to take 20 minutes. Sometimes I do have to pause it right there, and that's me being aware of my own emotional reaction and be like, okay, the next thing out of my mouth is going to be an insult, and that's not going to help this situation. So I'm going to back away. We're both going to back away for 20 minutes. We're going to regroup. We're going to come back, and we are going to talk about how do we improve this specific thing. And I'm going to get real specific about it. This is what we're talking about, this behavior. When we come back after 20 minutes, we'll see what we can do. Can this recording be made available? Yes, it will. It absolutely will be made available. It'll stop recording just as soon as we're done here. Something else I can't answer for anybody. We've got about 3 minutes left, so feel free to type your question into the questions tab. I'm happy to answer them. New questions coming my way. New answers coming your way. Can it be APP? The Canopy app? Yes, go to either the Google Play or Apple App Store. Canopy EAP app. There are a couple of canopies that come up when you Google it. What I can do for you, and I'll leave this on my screen, I'll bring up that QR code for you. You can take a look at that one last time. Zoom in on that QR code. See if that doesn't help with that app download. Found it. Lots of Canopy links. And here we go. For OTA staff, the recording, once we have it available, will be posted on the wellness page, the wellness SharePoint page. So as soon as they've got it, they will put it up on that link. Check your question there for that link. I am going to put that link right back into the chat. All right. Final questions. We are good. Thank you as well. Thank you for all your time and attention. Please reach out to Canopy if you've got extra questions, 1-800-433-2320. We hope that you can start feeling better. Make those goals small. You don't need to make them any bigger. Small goals allows you to crush them. Yes, people in Canopy providing services, we are all licensed and certified in the areas of our expertise. You get good counselors, good therapists. We are in-house. We are not going to pass you along to somebody else. When you call Canopy, you're talking to Canopy, and you can do so at 1-800-433-2320. Thanks so much, everybody. Have yourself a great rest of the day, a great rest of your week. My name is Nicholas. I'm from Canopy, your EAP.